Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we're talking about collapsing time to have more of what you want. And my guest is Shameca Tankerson. Shamika is a trailblazer and phenom in the field of business revenue acceleration, and she's on a mission to empower entrepreneurial giants to experience massive wealth fast and become self-made millionaires that build dynasties and enduring generational wealth. Her full bio is in the show notes, but what I wanted to say from my heart is that Shamika is one of my mentors, a really beloved, inspiring, badass woman, and to whom I will be forever grateful for turning me on to Dylan Lex, who is my new favorite jewelry designer. Welcome to the show, Shamika.
Oh my gosh, that introduction, I was like, oh my, she's gonna make me cry before we even start. And isn't Dylan Lex incredible?
Unreal. I mean, the permission. So not to make this show about me, but I used to have a whole story about that. I couldn't wear big things. And because of my neckline, I'm not wearing one of the very layered necklaces that I also have. But I had this story that I couldn't rock a big look, that I had to keep things tight and small, and that was really my size. And part of what has been so liberating, I mean, I already was liberated with the big frames before we met, but part of what has been so liberating to be with you is this permission to live into your full self. And I realized my full self is a lot bigger than I was allowing. And you've been a big part of that. So thank you.
So awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into this conversation about the relationship between yourself and time and what you're creating. So
exactly. And I'm excited to talk about this because if y'all get this thing about collapsing time and how to actually live in the state that allows you to have what you want, it affects your business, it affects relationship. Like, we're having a larger conversation today than purely relationship. This is alchemizing your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the world, and your relationship to time. That's what this conversation's about. So talk to me about, what does it mean to even collapse time? What are we talking about today?
I mean, we are really talking about collapsing time. We can't control time, right? Time is this infinite thing that's between God and happens in the universe, right? However, we can speed up the time frames in which we accomplish goals, in which we attract things to us that we desire by doing just a few things. And most of those things are about our relationship with ourselves. I was actually thinking about this and talking about this today. There's two big things I believe allows people to collapse timelines. And when I look at myself, I had this long journey of really trying to create specific results in my business, getting to $1 million. And then at a certain point, when I started to master these concepts, it just started happening faster and faster and faster and faster. I couldn't stop my revenue from doubling and tripling. And there's two main factors that I think are attributed to that. And the first one is trust, and the second one is surrender.
Oh, that's gorgeous. So let's unpack. What do you mean by trust?
So I believe that in the realm of having time move faster, attracting what you want to you more, whether that's the great love of your life or money that you want to make in your business, doesn't matter what it is, there is a level of trust that's required. And what I've looked at is there have been 4 levels of trust that I've had to really, really get intimate with. The first one is trusting myself. And that's like the number one, like it starts there. If you don't trust you, trust your dreams, trust your desires, trust that everything that you're asking for is available to you, that means it's pure, then none of it can be created. The second level of trust is trusting other people. You know, how many of us have been hurt, wronged, have had experiences that we don't like and we don't want to repeat. And what it causes us to do is put these walls up and we don't let other people in, or we don't trust other people to be as good-willed as we are. And thus we limit our ability to tap into the good of others to help us to accelerate our timelines.
Yes.
Trusting the process, right? We don't know what we don't know. And I believe that everything in life happens in an order. right? In a universal order that is set by a higher power than us. And we have to surrender and trust that process.
Mhm.
There is a process at play, whether we understand it or not, that it's all working and it's working for our good, not to our detriment. And then the last one is to trust God, period.
And does that include, speaking of time, the question around divine timing is coming up for me, because we set goals that often have timelines, but how do we even know? And is that really the right way to do it?
Absolutely. I believe timing is God's. I'm always reading this excerpt out of the book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which I actually have here right next to me, where he talks about setting goals for yourself and then just picking a date. We just grab a date out of the sky and we say, I want to do, I want to be married by, December 31st, 2022, right? And we're like, okay, I'm going to go make it happen. And what he goes on to say in the book is that why set a date for something that source God can create in an instant or at a time that is even more suitable than now, right? That's even more suitable for you, whatever that is. And so one of the parts of trusting God is like the releasing of the timing. That's God's business. I can't control time. I just do my part. And then I trust that the timing will be perfect.
Ah, I love that. So say a bit more about the second part, surrender.
Yeah. So, surrendering there's a lot. Like we want to control, right? We have the illusion of control in life that makes us feel safe, right? Sometimes we call them boundaries. There's all kinds of things we do to create safety. And control is only about the safety we want to feel as humans. And so I believe that like to collapse time, there's three things that you need to surrender. Control is one, normality or comfort is the other one. And then the final thing that we must surrender is thinking like the average person thinks.
Say more about that.
There's societal standards or paradigms that we've all bought into, right? There's things in society where we're like, okay, if you work hard, you can make a lot of money, right? If you're a good person, then good things should happen to you. And what we find as we move through life is that's not always true. And what we find is that the people who are living the most extraordinary lives are willing to take the most extraordinary risk.
Yes. And willing to fail more often than others.
Yes. In order for you to find the great love of your life or to have an incredible business, you have to be willing to kiss a few frogs. Even if it never happens, even if you find it the first time out, you must be willing to take the risk, right? And so that what we must release is this thing about the group. It's like, go slow, don't, once you get hurt, you should probably just not try again, right? Once you fail, be cautious. What if you just threw all of that to the wind and went for it? How would that change your life? Who would you be? Who would you become if that's how you lived? What possibilities would you be opening up if you were willing to risk it all?
Well, gorgeous questions. And so how does all of this end up collapsing time?
Ultimately, again, it's about surrender and control. So here's an analogy that I like to use. My grandmother would always say, a watched pot doesn't boil. She didn't say doesn't, she said don't. A watched pot don't boil. If you've ever heard that before. And the story is that if you sit and watch boiling water, like waiting on it to go faster and faster, it seems like it never does. But when you release, when you surrender and you trust the process, you trust that all things are working like they should be working. Let's say you walk away to go to the restroom or to do something else. All of a sudden your water's boiling over, right? Seemingly time speeds up because you have released control, you have surrendered, you have allowed all the things that are in divine order to happen in order for that to come about. And so that's the process of collapsing time. When we release, when we surrender, when we trust, we actually speed up the time frames and the timelines in which we draw things to us or we get to a certain point.
And where would you suggest someone start? Like, let's say someone wants to have a more successful business, or they want to attract the right person, or Or maybe they want their current relationship to feel better by a certain time, which again, we've already covered why we shouldn't always have a fixed idea of when things have to happen by, because they can happen so much faster. What's the first step to creating that self-trust?
Yeah. So I think there's an examining of self that has to happen. And I think the first step to self-trust is your surrender, right? To releasing of everything that's outside of your control, releasing the illusion that you have any control at all over the timing, over the person that you're trying to find, over it. Let's say you're working on a relationship. You have no control over the other person and how fast they go through their own process. So the more we can surrender and release, I think control is like the first place, releasing control, just surrendering into the moment. You only focus on what you can control, and that is you, right? I can only control my own actions. That's it.
Yep.
Everything else is outside of me. Everything else is outside of me. Timing is outside of me. Who it comes through is outside of me. Where it comes from is outside of me. Where and when it happens, how it happens is outside of me. I cannot control any of those things, but I can control myself. So I do my part and I breathe, I relax, I surrender, and then I let God do the rest, no matter what that is.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about being mentored by you is your deep self-responsibility, that emphasis on, all of that other stuff we don't control. It's how I show up. It's who I be.
Yeah.
Can you say a bit about that embodiment of being?
I think we're trained and groomed in society, especially here in America, and I'm sure there's people listening from all over the place, but to do, to be workhorses, where school is about getting us into the workforce. And there's not a lot about being and knowing of self and honoring of self and just releasing all other things. And so many people think that action is the cure for everything. And while action plays a part, everything has a part. It's not about the action that you take. Like you can dress pretty every day, you can throw lipstick on every day and still not find the love of your life, because you're only going to attract what to you, that which you are a resonant frequency for. And so it's not about the action that you take, it's more about who you are being inside of that action. Where are you living? What plane, frequency, and resonance are you living on? Are you living on love of your life frequency? Are you living on $1 million business frequency? Are you living in lack and feeling sorry for yourself, or hurt and harm and hatred for past mistakes and failures and setbacks and all of those things, even in relationships? That's a different frequency than everything that I desire is here, right? That resides here. All of the hurt, harm, and everything you're carrying with you is on a lower frequency.
I'd love to share with folks a bit more about your story, like how you came to this place, because I know it's been a journey for you.
Yeah, it absolutely has. There's two parts of my story that I want to share if we have time, and I'll share the first part, which is the business side of it. For me, my identity had always been wrapped up in achieving. And so much so that when I got to a point in life where I ended up losing my business, it was very hard to bounce back from that. There was a lot of shame attached to it, a lot of self-loathing attached to it. And I try, or so I thought I was, to show up and get ahead, but it was all still attached to the story of losing everything. I got to get it better than that. I got to get back to where it was. And it wasn't until I started to go on this journey of self-healing, of truth, of just honoring myself for where I was, no matter if it was, I had 1 people in a program or I had 30 people in the program, that I was just okay with being, and also trusting myself to just be me, not what I thought I needed to be. I didn't need to look successful to be successful. I just needed to be where I was in the moment and really just honor myself. I cut my hair and went natural and eventually dyed it purple, and now it's blue. And I wear this stuff. I literally walk around town like this isn't a costume for working, right? This is me all the time. And the more I come home to myself, the more my desires find me, because I believe that I'm living in my God frequency. Oh my gosh, that just came to me right now. I'm living who I am by divine design, period. When I look at the relationship side and I think about releasing, my son just spent a couple of weeks with me. And for a long time, my son left home when he was 17. He thought I was the most horrible parent in the world. And I remember releasing him and giving him to God. I cried in my living room, this living room right here. I spent the whole day just praying for other people and crying. That's all I did. And it was a cleansing, and I gotta let him go. I can't hold on to what do I need to do to make this better? And as I spent the 2 weeks with him, more like about 12 days or so, and I spent that time with him, and we went to Disneyland, and he just wanted to be everywhere that I was. My heart was so full. And I went back to that moment of the hurt of trying to figure out how and what to make that relationship better, and remembering the surrender and how difficult that was. It wasn't easy, but just to release him to his own process freed me. And then full circle, we come back around and our relationship is better and stronger than it's ever been.
Oh, that's so beautiful to hear. I just was responding to someone with a microcosm about what you just said, which was their partner shuts down, let's say, shuts down, doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to answer questions. And can you trust the other person to have their process instead of needing to control the situation and have to try to poke and pry and get them to talk to you? It's like, what if you just surrendered to the situation and released them into their own timing and trust, and you be vibrating sovereignty,
Yes.
love,
Yes.
sufficiency,
Yes.
trusting they'll come back in their own time. It's such a different way to relate.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's why there's those levels of trust, right? And one of them is trusting other people. You have to trust the sovereignty of other people. You have to give them the dignity of their own experience where you don't meddle. Again, the only thing we can control is ourselves. Everybody else is going through their own process.
I feel like meddling is sort of the frequency that most of us live on. You know what I mean? It's like
the illusion of control, right? It's
yeah,
I want to control, what can I do? What if you can't do anything?
Exactly. What if what you need to do is just deepen your relationship to your own presence?
Yes.
And trust that. So for the listeners, continuing this idea of being able to bring what you want in real time, faster. I mean, I know for me, sometimes I get impatient, right? Yeah. And it's like, I want the thing now, and so how do you balance that surrender and that trust with the reality of actually wanting and needing certain things to happen by a certain time? If we're talking money, maybe there's rent that has to be paid. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking relationship, it's more, I think, more volitional. But how do you balance a real need or a real desire with trusting timing to work out on its own?
Yeah, I love that you use the words need and desire, because need is on a lower frequency, right? Need is based on lack and desire is based on abundance. Yeah. And so it's understanding that words and things all live in frequencies. I was saying this the other day, your goals aren't goals at all. They aren't destinations. They're frequencies to attune to. There's a resonance to having all your needs met. And there's a resonance to not having those needs met. Which one do you live in most often, right? So this is how I reconcile it. Life is full of dichotomies, right? Dualities. There's the circle of life, and then there's death, right? That looms over all of us. And you could have both happening at the same time. A loved one could be transitioning out of the world, and a loved one could be coming into and transitioning into the world at the same time. And you won't be sad for the one coming into the world because the one that's leaving is transitioning out. You have to be able to be happy here and grieve over here, right? Find joy in the new life while grieving the life that is being removed, right? Released. And so I believe that that's just life. And if you can learn how to hold both things, then you become masterful at moving things along. It's a seemingly collapsing of time, right? Because we don't really control time. It just makes it move faster. You look up and you're there, right? I looked up, my son's 24. He left when he was 17. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's home. He's good. He's safe. He knows he's loved, right? And he's got a deeper understanding of it than he's ever before. But if this entire time I'd been focused on making him see what this is or could be, if he just allowed.
This is where I was coming from.
Yes,
like
all of that, we'd probably still be in the same state, thus extending the time frame to get to the point that we are today. That's the beauty of it. It's like, you got to be able to hold both the desire to have the thing and the knowing that you're not there yet.
Yes. I mean, did you have to like sit on your hands when you first started? How did you not?
Absolutely. It's just a reminder to myself. Like, if you think about relationships or anything else, the more you try to meddle in something, like watching the water boil, right? Or like turning the oven on and off, or the stove on and off. Is it working? Is it boiling yet? Will stop the process, right? So when I got that understanding and really being able to look at how things had been working in my life, realizing the more I surrender, the more I get what I get, there was a payoff to learning to surrender. There was a payoff to not being focused on the lack or what I didn't have, or trying to pressure God into timing. Were there times where, yeah, ends weren't met because I didn't get the money when I was supposed to? Yeah, but I've never been out to the degree where I couldn't come back from it, right? There was always a God wink, or what we call a ram in the bush in church. There was always something around the corner, some angel that God sent my way to say, I see you and I honor where you are on this journey. And here is the next step, or here is your leg up. That's where trusting the process and God comes from. No matter what it looks like, I honestly believe, Maria Elizabeth, that the path that I am on, even if it in the moment seems riddled in pain and anguish, is the most expedient path to where I am desiring to go.
Wow. I mean, that is such a powerful belief to hold. You know, if you hold that no matter where you are, it's the most expedient path to where you want to go, that's going to short circuit a lot of shenanigans,
Yes.
a lot of mental shenanigans, you know. I wanted to come back. I've heard you talk about how when you declare something you want and you commit to having that, very often tests show up. Can you say a bit about the testing?
Yeah, it's like, you're like, here's what I want. And God's like, you sure? Right? And the test can look in different ways. I heard somebody call it the prove it stage, right? It's like, you want that? Prove it, right? And it can look differently. It can be the tearing away or the removal of things in your life, right? So it can feel like you're going through a battle. Like, I remember I kept saying over and over again, I want more people in my programs. I want more people to work with me. I have this program that had like 8 to 12 people in it at any given time. And I was like adamant, like, this year I want to bring in more people. Now in my mind, more people was like around 20-ish, right? That year, that program went down to 3 people. That was a prove it moment. Do you really want it? And here's the beautiful
How do you stay the course in that moment? How do you stay the course and not give up?
So it's present to what's in front of me. Remember, I was talking about that. I started to be grateful for just whatever and whoever was in front of me. I only focused on that, not the lack thereof, not where I wanted to be, but where I am, and serving and being in gratitude and living life to the fullest in whatever the current state is. That's it. The beautiful thing about it is when I look back on that moment, it was hard. because I was thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my, do I need to fix my program? Like, what's going on? And in hindsight, I realized it was a sweeping away of things. All three people that were left with me, and this was back in 2020, the beginning of 2020, all three people that were left in that program are still with me to this day. That year, we brought 30 people, 36 people into that program. We now have about 52. It's phenomenal how that test or that proving will come, right? The test can also look like, can you handle what's next, right? So you say, I want the love of my life, and this suave guy shows up, and history tells you that suave means something's wrong.
Danger, danger.
Yeah, and you're choosing based on history,
Yeah.
and you miss the opportunity. You said this is exactly.
Well, and then you start acting out of that supposition,
Absolutely.
right? So your actions start to flow out of mistrust and start to
Yes.
flow out of too good to be true and
Yes.
all of that. And then you sabotage.
Yes. I see this happen in business too all the time. People say, I want higher level clients, people that are willing to pay. And then God sends them someone who haggles them for their rates just to test and see if they'll hold the line,
Yeah.
or will they cave in, right? Like, I'm tired of having my boundaries threatened or challenged. And then someone gets sent to challenge your boundaries to see how tired you really are, right? It's a testing in leadership of self.
It reminds me one of my favorite quotes of Oprah's. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase it. If you pray for patience, get ready for long lines at the bank.
Yes, basically. And it's like you want something you've yet to experience. You want something phenomenal. What are you willing to go through to experience that? And how open are you really? Because sometimes we ask for things and then something lackluster shows up. And because we're so desperate and so ready for time to speed up, we take that. And the signal is you are not ready for what you desire. Then you get the same thing, and then you're frustrated, and you get the proof that you were looking for, that life just keeps sending you trash. And you're in that cycle again and again and again and again, because you won't hold the line, right? You won't hold the boundary, the standard that you're saying that you want for yourself. So proof can come by the peeling and releasing of things, the removal of things, or it can come by sending you counterfeit just to test it.
Oh, that's so good. I noticed that one of the things that's so powerful about you is how you expand to hold more good. Because what I see a lot is good happens. Let's say that partner or that dream person does show up, or your business does expand in the way that you want, and then you blow out there. A lot of people haven't built the capacity to hold it.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about collapsing time, how do you simultaneously invite the thing to happen faster, but build the capacity to hold it when it arrives too, so you don't blow out?
Yeah. So a lot of it is just awareness that when you get the thing, it's going to feel a little wonky. Like there's going to be excitement and fear at the same time. Most people, when it comes to money, it's like excited that I just had a 6-figure month, and can I do it again? Yeah. Right? We're already in that immediately, right? It feels a little something like that. And so one of the things that I teach is this process of rapid transformation. What we want to do is we actually want to normalize the new level before we try to expand it to more. Because what most people do is either they get into the fear, can I hold it? So they contract, which is why they don't have the capacity to hold. Or they try to overextend. Like, you think of a rubber band that's only yay big, right? And you pull it and it snaps, because it's not one of those rubber bands that you can pull this far. It only has so much capacity. And so you go, okay, I did $100,000 a month. Now let's do a $200,000 a month. And everything just falls. Yeah. Yeah. It's not even like, let me repeat it. And so what you want to do is you want to normalize. And normalize doesn't mean you have to do it again and again and again. You need it to be but of course I do $100,000 months. Of course, there's a man in my life who loves every part of me. Of course there is. And I will typically share so that people get an example of things that they've embodied or normalized so they can know what it feels like when you've actually done it. You want to kind of stay in the space of honoring it and celebrating it until it is of course. Two things. Breathing, you have normalized, you have embodied. You do not have to think about it. You're not wondering if you're going to do it in the next second. You're never wondering if you need to in the next second. It just happens. You trust that the air is going to be there. It is. And then the second one is walking. You get up in the morning, you get out of the bed, you go to the restroom, whatever your cycle is. You don't think, I wonder if the ground's there. Am I going to be able to stand up? Okay, here we go. None of that, right? So you want to get that next level to the point where you have embodied it to the degree of walking and breathing, where it's not even a thought that you're going to do 6 figures next month. You're not like, where are my clients going to come from next? None of that comes up for you. And the way that you do that is by honoring and celebrating where you are, not discounting it and not moving on too quickly. Honoring the fact that you are creating the business of your dreams, that you are encountering the love of your life, honoring it in the moment instead of having freak out moments about it.
So I understand that you have a free gift for our listeners around cash creation.
So we've been talking about collapsing time and creating money. And one of the most beautiful things I talked about trust and surrender. The other thing is simplification. Like simplifying life, simplifying everything. We overcomplicate so much. And so I am going to be doing my cash creation crash course coming up shortly. I just really want to invite those who are building businesses and finding that they're struggling to get to the next level, to come join us. It's a game for me. And I want to gift everybody, every one of your listeners who wants to play this game with us, the ability to attend at no cost. And we're going to spend an entire week doing the simplest strategies and creating rapid revenue in your business, things that we probably have forgotten about. And I think in all areas of life, when it comes to collapsing time, if we can go back to the basics, you will find that the basics will always do. In love, in life, and in business.
Beautiful. So that link is in the show notes, along with how to learn more about Shamika's work, how to contact her, how to get into her world. Personally, I highly recommend getting into Shamika's world. She, on the surface, yes, we're talking money, business, but it's so much deeper than that. It's truly a life and sovereignty school for I don't know how else to put it, but it's really about how to lead yourself. So in the way that I want people to lead themselves in their relationships, Shamika is a powerful stand for leading yourself in your business, in your world. And yeah, so check her out. Do you have a final thought that you'd like to leave folks with before we wrap?
One of the things that I'm always saying is this, and I think it's just a beautiful sentiment with everything that we talked about. No matter where you are in this journey, and no matter what it is that drew you to listening to this podcast or to just listen to us today, you are not broken. You are perfect, whole, and complete as you are. Everything that you desire is completely possible and available to you. And if you can just surrender and trust in that knowing, you'll watch it unfold.
Amen. So this has been Relationship Alchemy. I'm Ray Elizabeth Molly, your host. And remember, until next time, a great relationship starts with you.